fine. I'm going to leave the stage to you. Just let me know when to start directly. You've done great.
Yeah, I've said the recording. So I'll just do the introduction and Andrew can start. Okay. Okay. Good everyone. Welcome to another Power BI session. Today our guest speaker is James, and James will be taking us on conditional formatting. So the Power BI learning community is being powered by UrBizEdge and being sponsored by Enterprise DNA. Enterprise DNA is a firm that looks into empowering Power BI users so they can get more from their data and probably use it to change the world. They have a lot of free courses and webinars. You can get that by logging into the website, and you see access to, they have courses, YouTube videos, and also webinars that they. Then UrBizEdge is also a registered Microsoft consulting, financial modeling, business intelligence, data analysis, and enterprise solution firm in Nigeria. They're also the developers of the Nigerian financial market analysis tool, which comes available on the Microsoft Store. And this is the upcoming training calendar for the upcoming week. Then today, our guest speaker is James. James is a business intelligence analyst, also a content creator. You can get his content from YouTube and also on LinkedIn. He's based in Scotland. He's hooked on Power BI through supply chain projects within the oil and gas industry. Right now, he's sponsoring his newfound love for Power BI, Python, SQL, and everything data. He's also the founder of Matador software, where he creates YouTube tutorials focused on data analysis and business intelligence. And his YouTube channel has quick Power BI tips with up to 34 videos ranging from DAX, its maps to conditional icons to Power Query to Power Automate, dynamic elements, timestamps, and everything. Like I said, everything data. So, how are you, James? James.
Yes, thank you very much for the introduction.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead then. If you want me to start.
Yeah, you can share your screen.
All right, let me see. Get rid of all this garbage. Ignore my desktop. I can assure you my real desktop doesn't look like that. And then I'm going to go in and we'll start, go through a few slides. So anyone, let us know if there's any audio issues. I do have a headset. Try not to use it if I can. But yeah, thank you for joining. Thanks for having me. I'm always impressed by the amount that this particular user group, great guests you have on. So it's a pleasure to be on here. And thanks for, I see all the new faces alike in the chat. So that's great. So we are going to go through, we've got an hour, and the basic sort of theme is going to be, we're going to go through some slides into the Power BI environment. I'm going to showcase some things that we can do with not only conditional formatting, but I want to focus on some data visualization as well, those principles, and then sort of pull everything together and make sense of it and give you some tips along the way. Because at the end of the day, you're probably going to know a lot about conditional formatting anyway if you're in here. I might show you some things that aren't so ordinary, but what I want to emphasize is that we want to do things the correct way, data visualization wise. So hopefully you learn something. After that, like I said, we'll look at different types of conditional formatting, the basics, rule-based formatting. Then we'll go into some conditional formatting with DAX and Power Query, UNICHAR icons. You don't need to know what these are. I'm going to go through and explain it. And then some JSON custom icons. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation, I think. And at the end, we're going to have plenty of Q&A, hopefully. So we'll see how the session goes, but that'll be the plan. If anyone has any questions, you can feel free to ask me, and I'll see if I can answer. So a little bit about me. I originally started in supply chain. For anyone here who's a budding data analyst, BI developer, whatever you want to call it, data scientist maybe, it's important to note that there's no real, you don't have to go to uni and get a computer science degree, but we'll talk about this a bit later. But most people that I've encountered really start in supply chain or finance. They use the tools and then they get a love for the technology through there. So that's what happened to me. I got hooked. There was a few projects I needed to work on. I then went into consulting for a consulting company, and I did some work on my own as well. And now I'm a full-time BI developer, BI analyst for a private healthcare company. And in my spare time, all of my spare time actually, is really taken up by data projects, making content for YouTube, LinkedIn. You can see my, I'll get rid of this here. You can see my YouTube and LinkedIn here down below if you want to check it out. If not, that's fine. And I regularly create Power BI, SQL, and Python content on YouTube. So I've been working with Power BI for about 4 or 5 years, maybe. Python for about the same length of time, and SQL for slightly less, but it's one of my passions. When I'm not doing that and I have any spare time, usually I'm getting in trouble for not spending time with my family, which is something I enjoy doing, so I'll be doing that. If not, I like to play golf or rugby, and usually at the end here, you'll see me coding. I'll have my head somewhere in a computer. So yeah, that's really, there's not much more exciting things to me. Like I said, we're going to look at some, I want to go over just a report that I sort of created this morning, and then we're going to go into conditional formatting. But I think I'm going to mention some things, data visualization. And there is principles, but they vary from person to person, from article to article, whatever that may be. But these are some of the key principles, I think, when you're starting a Power BI project, and they're key to actually getting this over the line, getting end users in a company to really gravitate towards the report, because you need them to use it, otherwise it's not a success. So there's a few key ones. I would say you obviously have to answer your end users' questions. You can be the world's best person at data viz, or DAX, or Power Query, or Python, or SQL. But if you're not answering people's questions, well, nothing really matters. It just doesn't do a job. And unfortunately, you wouldn't last very long analyzing data. Choose visuals wisely. I know there's people who hate certain visuals. We've got see Jocelyn was in here who really does not like pie charts. I can't say I'm a huge fan. But aside from all that, I would say we need to pick the correct visuals that sort of lean to us giving people insights or answering questions. Basic one, but really important. Use color and size to direct attention to key areas. We want to keep our dashboards and reports uncluttered. So a key way to do that is not to have too many visualizations, but make every little detail as powerful as you can. And color and size are a great way to do that. Keep it simple, absolutely. Again, if we want to highlight people's attention to areas in a report, keep it simple. And also you'll find, if you're going into an organization and let's say I have to create a report on HR metrics. Well, I might have someone from HR looking at it. I might have someone from supply chain. I might have an engineer who's a manager of someone, you know, and everyone speaks in different languages. So in my opinion, the simplest reports that you see as an end user, or I see, are usually the ones that are taking the most work, because that's the hardest thing to do, to just answer questions, look great and simple. So that's something we want to focus on. Provide context and a call to action. What do I mean by that? Okay, so context, obviously I could show you figures on a screen that mean something to people, but then there's other people who might not know what we're referring to. So I could provide you, and we're going to look into this in the report I built, I could provide you key metrics, sales figures. But unless there's, you know, somewhere down the line where I said, okay, well, this was our target, this is what we were looking to improve, £1 million to someone or $1 million might mean a lot, but to the next company or the next person, that doesn't sound like a lot of money. So we need to show people why what we're presenting to them is good or bad or needs work. And a call to action, that means that people can look at our data and it prompts them to do something. So maybe that sales that I reported of £1 million was actually 25% down in the last quarter. So the sales manager needs to go to all the sales team and say, hey, get out, knock on doors, whatever, make some calls, we need more money. So we want to be able to let people do things with that data. So we're starting to see how we want to build a full cycle. And if you can, great thing about Power BI, incorporate interactivity. So we'll see some of that with conditional formatting. You know, we can use hyperlinks, we can use icons, we can use slicers, let people interact with the data and feel like they're part of the process. So yeah, for me, they're all crucial. That's definitely not an exhaustive list, but I think they're very, very important. They're good principles. And I guess for anyone, I'm not going to assume anyone's ability, so this is going to be friendly to more or less everyone. What is conditional formatting? Well, I've written some text here, which you can feel free to read. But essentially, we give report developers the ability to customize cells, areas, fields to understand if they're important or not. So, you know, we could say it's universal. If you see a completely dark dashboard, let's say there's one cell that's red, wherever we're from, we realize that red one probably isn't good. It's the same if we have an icon with an exclamation mark, probably not going to be good. So that's the very basics of it. And we hope by doing that, we give people that, you know, that nudge to say, right, okay, someone needs to go and investigate this. As we said here, we can picture data with data bars, KPI icons, web links, and more. And it's possible to apply conditional formatting to any text or data field in Power BI on the condition that certain information is present. So we really want numeric, you know, and we want to provide a color name, a hex code. We'll look at these things, so don't worry if you don't understand URL values, etc. The key takeaway, and why I've mentioned data visualization as well, both conditional formatting and data viz drives insights. And essentially, that's what we want to do. Microsoft's official tagline, or one of them, for Power BI would be make data-driven decisions in an instant. So we want to take all this information, we'll mash it up in Power Query and SQL, wherever, we bring it in, and we give people the ability to do lots of cool things and fix issues. So if there's no questions at this current moment, I'm going to move into the environment, and we're actually going to look at sort of conditional formatting from the very basics. So I'm going to come out of here. What I will also do is I'm going to take my camera off. I don't think you need to see me all this time if you don't have to. There we go. And as long as you can still see my screen, we're going to go into Power BI. There we go. So get rid of this here. And I'm in Power BI desktop. We've got an hour, so it wouldn't have been practical to do everything with you, you know, build everything, write measures. So a lot of this is done, but we're still going to go through a lot of the concepts of conditional formatting. So I guess before we even start, to understand what we're going to do, I told you I want to provide context, if possible. So we're actually using a very popular database for practice called the Northwinds database. Now, this is available if you wanted to go on and Google Northwind database. You can do this in Power BI, and you can usually get a sample, or we can actually type in, if you want to find it ever, Northwind database sample GitHub. And if we look in GitHub, we can find a script. So it'll be this one, Northwind. And if you go to the raw file here, here we go, view raw. If you're proficient with SQL, you can actually copy and paste this whole thing in, take it into SQL, and then directly import it into Power BI. That's what I've done. You don't really need to know that, but if you want to play around with this, it's helpful. And the reason I say that is because when you're working with data and practicing your data skills, it's important to know where you can get mock data. And this also will help you with things like data modeling. Whereas if you maybe go to Kaggle, it's another website, kaggle.com, you can get data sets from. Quite often they're very clean. And sometimes you want to have a play around with the data modeling. So if you want to look at Northwinds, you can do. But I'm going to show you what we're focusing on. So to break it down, Northwind's data is just, it's meant to be Microsoft's version of a company that ships specialty food around the world. Now, it's quite an old database, but it doesn't really matter because the principles are still going to stand the same. Now, if I get rid of this, we're actually going to be looking predominantly at the invoicing today, because I said to you, I wanted to give you a key area that we can look at and work on together. So we might want to look at, for example, our sales. So we've got salespersons, so that could be important as to why our company is not performing. We've got shipping details, which again would help us analyze underlying data. We've got countries, we've got dates that things were shipped, and so on. We've got a unit price and an extended price. So that's obviously key, because a common area, again, people will come to Power BI quite often from finance, because invoicing is where you generate all of your money. So of course, that's going to be something that people are interested in. And also we will have somewhere along freight. So we obviously want to see our freight charges, because that's going to be one of the key outgoings. So we can take in money, but obviously that freight's going to affect us. So I guess that's all we need to sort of know right now about the data, because we're gonna look at conditional formatting, so it's gonna be quite universal whatever data you use. Again, I just created a mock. We're calling it Matador Traders because I'm James from Matador Software. If you've caught me on YouTube, and again, like I said, I just want to drill down on some basics. What I find helpful to do when I build a report is to give a navigation page. Because if we were to view this in the Power BI service in the web, which is where you'll get a link to a Power BI report, we would hide this and you likely wouldn't see it. And we would give people a way to ease into the report and navigate around. It sounds quite simple, but if you were to give end users a report where they had 20 pages and they didn't know where to start, maybe they hadn't been trained on it, no one's going to look at your report, and it's not going to get the usage it requires. So we're just calling this the Executive Summary Report. And we've said it aims to provide directors powerful insights in the core areas of our sales metrics. So we'll look at what these are, and this should enable stakeholders to dive deeper into their data and prompt a call to action. So like I said, people are going to be able to look at their data, and we'll help them with some conditional formatting too, maybe, and they can say, right, okay, I know where we need to improve, whether that's sales, whether I need to go find another shipping company because my one's charging me too much. Maybe we need to go into new countries. Well, we're going to look at all of these things. So, yeah, perfect. What I like to do as well, we're in an age, and this is just tips for people who might be learning Power BI or business intelligence in general. We're living in an age where you can do most things in the Power Platform, which predominantly consists of Power Apps, Power BI, and Power Automate. One thing that's happened in companies, including the one I work with right now, is people build an IT ticketing system, Power Apps. So maybe in your navigation, you could have something here where if people do want to report something to us, the report developers, they could do it in a ticketing system. So we said we want to focus on invoicing today, and this is where our sort of conditional formatting journey is going to begin. Again, I just wanted to highlight some key things. For data viz, we're speaking at. I'm aware we have some people in here who are very good with data viz, so we won't focus on it for too long. But like I said, we want everything to be clean. So there's a key navigation here. So you can go to navigation, summary, invoicing, orders, conditional formatting, whatever that may be. Obviously, we've not built a full report. I did this today. Give people an idea of the time their data was last refreshed. We can do that with a bit of DAX. So if we look here, we can actually create a measure where we're saying where the report was last refreshed, and this feeds off a column within Power Query. So we can format it so that it reads exactly like we want it to. So that's important, I guess. Obviously, maybe your report only has a scheduled refresh once a night. The data model behind it refreshes overnight. Well, people need to be able to realize whether what they're looking at is an accurate reflection. Obviously, it's not that applicable here because we're covering 96, 97, and 98. So we went back in time because this is a sample data set from Microsoft. But like I said, if we want to provide people certain insight into the figures we're showing them, we could do something like this. We could say that we can basically show them what these key 3 invoicing metrics were. We wanted to decrease freight costs, expand shipments globally, and improve our sales team. And then we can give them some, you notice in red, like we said, universally, people are going to realize it's not very good. and maybe our top 3 sales team aren't even performing as well as we hoped. We can show that we're behind in the company target for operating countries, and we could show that, you know, our freight cost over our income on average is 16%, and our average freight cost per load is £96, so Great British pounds. But one thing that I would find concerning, again, if I worked in this company, is that you can see in April, we have our highest freight month, our highest sales month. We have £176,000 coming in, but our freight costs £30,000. However, when we're making £36,000 in a month, our freight costs £5,000. And you can see here that there is certain areas where I don't think our freight cost is consistent with our sales. Now that could be down to a number of variables. You know, there could be import charges, it could be more expensive items, we could be making further trips. Right now we're not looking into that grain of detail, but these are the sorts of things, and we could, you know, include a line here to give people a call to action of what they should do. That's quite dynamic. We could include links to, maybe they can go and look at the latest AGM notes online, and we could include icons here, whatever. So on data visualization, they're key elements. We want things to stand out. So these numbers stand out very clearly because our color scheme is really white and yellow. So if we have a red, people are drawn to that and think, right, this is what we're not doing very well. So yeah, important to bear in mind, it's clean. We're not overloading anyone with information. It's very easy to see. And that's the way in general we probably want things to happen. And when you eventually get maybe into a business intelligence environment, things go through what we call user acceptance testing, where the end users have to basically pass things, and it has to meet what they asked for at the very start when you scoped out the project. And essentially they need to be able to use it, or things never pass user acceptance testing. So the more clean and simple you can make things look, the more chance you've got pushing these through to actual reports that people might use on a daily basis. So that's important to know. But let's go into conditional formatting. So I've got a new page here, very simple. We've got a table. And predominantly when you use conditional formatting, you're likely going to use tables. So we've got our customers, and basically this is, let's say, Matador traders. This is everyone we transport their delicacies for. So we might have some cheeses, some wines, whatever. But I want to see by customer what the freight cost is. And maybe I want to see by sales what we are, because very quickly we can see who the customers we should be pushing, we should be getting more contracts with, can we expand? And also with the freight costs, we want to say, right, okay, well, I realize quick stop give us a lot of trade and we get a lot of money from them, but their freight costs to meet it nearly, you know, it's between a fifth and a sixth of what we're making in sales is too high. So then that would give me a call to action to say, right, I'm the exec director. I want to get onto the head of supply chain. We need new contracts, and we need to get on some sort of standardized deal where we pay less in freight. And if we assume in invoicing, like we said, that freight and sales are 2 out of 3 of our key metrics, and we want to expand shipments globally, then this is becoming very clear what we need to do. So you see, like I said, we've not actually even hopped into conditional formatting yet, but the power of context and data visualization is already starting to make sense, because you as a user now know exactly what we're looking for. And these executive directors that we produce reports for might only have 3 minutes in a day to look at this report. So we better make sure that we give them the information they actually need in that 3 minutes so they can go press on their middle managers to get things done. So that's the background, that's the context. And I'm sure many of you have worked with conditional formatting. One last caveat, I'm still talking a little bit here, but one last caveat. You'll notice I have the modern visualization pane. Now, I think it's in general availability now, so everyone should have this. But maybe you have the older style. If you do need to fix that and you are trying to maybe build a table with me, if you go into File, Options and Settings, options. It'll take a second to think, but it will load this little window here. And in preview features, you will be able to turn on the new format pane. And when you do that and click OK, it'll tell you essentially that's fine, it's worked, but you need to close down Power BI to make, so you just need to restart Power BI to make the changes come into effect. Some people use older format pane, that's fine, but I will be using this one. So important to note on that specific point. Now, I want to leave about 15 minutes at the end for Q&A, so that leaves us a good 20 minutes to practically look at conditional formatting now. Covered the data viz side. So, I guess the first thing to know, and if you've not used conditional formatting, we are coming in at basic stage, so this will be fine. Let's say I'm looking at sales, and I want to start to conditionally format things. Cool, that's fine. Right, well, how do we do that? So you'll see here in the visual, within the visualizations and build visual, I have my sales field, which is obviously pulled in from the invoices. I have a column that I've renamed to sales. It was called extend price just to make things simpler. And here is where I want to be. So I can either right click on sales or click the drop down. I'll choose to right click because I'm lazy and that extra 0.1 second means a lot for me. So I can conditionally format now. Now, I'll quickly give you an overview of these. We've got background color, font color, data bars, and icons. Now, in my opinion, I'll show you each one very quickly. Background color is a bit tricky in the sense that I think if we do this too much, our dashboard tends to look a bit like a crayon drawing, like a Crayola drawing, like we did when we were younger. And it starts to lose a bit of meaning because you've got so many colors all over the place. It's hard for users to focus. So we could give it a gradient if we wanted. And what this is basically going to do, it shows the density, so the higher values with a dark blue and a light blue, the minimum. Maybe we want to differentiate. We can include a middle color, so maybe I'll make this. We had the dark blue, you know, something like that, whatever. We could base things on rules. It takes a bit longer, but we could say, you know, if the value is greater than 0 and it's less than 1,000, that's one too many zeros, I believe, we could give it a color. But it's very easy just to set up with the gradient, add a middle color, make things a bit more specific, give it that one, and we can click OK. And when we do that, Power BI automatically, essentially, will show you the data. Now I've got it listed by sales, so if I click here, this basically sorts at either ascending or descending value, high to low or low to high. But if I was to sort this by freight cost, I could see, well, actually, I've got an item here that's quite dark, so it automatically draws you to it where actually, hey, rattlesnake I'm getting a good deal with because, you know, now we're at nearly, you know, we're not far off a 9th or 10th of that freight percentage in terms of sales. So that, hey, that's quite good. Whereas here, I've got, it's a quarter my freight compared to my sales. So I can already see where the issues are. Well, that needs to go, that needs to be fixed, and so on. I can see other items maybe where I've got 16,000 and 2,000. So what's that, 7th and 8th, you know, and we can start to piece things together. Now, this is the very basics, and we're going to look at more advanced cases because it's still not great, but it gives you an introduction. Now, my issue here, when I'm using conditional formatting like this, it looks a bit like Lego blocks, and I think it's a bit hard to process. It's not the most efficient thing in the world. So there's a couple things you can do. We need to go back into that column sales, right click, hit conditional formatting, and we can actually remove any conditional formatting we have. So I could click just all or remove the background color. If I had more than one thing, I could remove it all. Because you can add more than one conditional. You could conditionally format the font and the background. And a common use case, I've got a video on this, which we're not going to cover today, is heat maps. I'm sure lots of people have done this before, where you can actually make a heat map out of a matrix table here. And all you actually really need to do, if you had days or months, and you wanted to show maybe when your most frequent delivery days are, you could conditionally format the background and the font to be the same color. And then you can power that up with a DAX measure and you could maybe have, 5 or 6 different colors where we can really get a good level of detail and understand our data. But if we stick to the basics right now, in sales, I can right click again, and in conditional formatting, we could do the font color. Again, it's really is the same principle. So I'm not going to focus on that too much. Gradient, we could have rules, but what I want to look at is sort of the more efficient methods, in my opinion, of conditionally formatting. So data bars is very quick, and all you actually need to do, I could actually just state a positive bar color where it's this darker blue, and set a direction, whether I want it to flow left to right or right to left, and you'll see what this means. I actually haven't really needed to click anything because this dark blue is a nice palette match to my black and my yellow. So if I click OK, you're going to see that it now shows my sales. It's very quick and very easy in terms of, again, basically how long the data bar is the percentage in accordance with the max sale. So if I have 110,000, you're going to see that 51 is roughly half, it's not quite. So my data bar is going to show us that. So maybe I could choose to order things by the highest average unit price. And you'll see here that we could, again, begin to draw some conclusions from these data bars. So, whatever catches the eye. So I could say, all right, well, quick stop, my average price for all of the quick stop products is £31. However, it's my highest sales, 110,000, because the data bar is completely full. Okay, well, that's £31, but a much more expensive product, you can see not many people want. And you can start to try and draw correlations. So I've got £43 here. It's not bad sales, so maybe there is something in this where people want to pay around £30. And you could go and analyze these things. We could build more visualizations pretty much based on this one use case. You can see one our second or third highest sales has a £26. So we could begin to say, all right, well, is there something in this? Let's go check it out. Who's buying these products? Why do they want to pay between 25 and 35? Is it because the product's the best value? Whatever. And we can start to do things. And we've done that just from the very basics of conditional formatting and looking at some data bars. So maybe I want to do one more of the basic examples. So in conditional formatting, again, I can just remove anything I've got, go back into sales, right click, conditional formatting, and icons. Now, icons are probably my favorite. Pardon me. I think they provide you the most impact without overloading users. And I'm all about preserving your Power BI real estate, and by that I mean your canvas, making it as powerful as possible whilst being simple. So again, you could have an icon where I can delete one of these rules. The style doesn't really matter to me, it's custom. So I'll say if the value is greater than or equal to 0 number and it's less than the number 50,000, remember we have to change this from percent to number, then we'll say the sales isn't very good. This is very basic, basically 2 options. So I can add this X. And then what I could do here is I could add a new rule, and I could say if the value is greater than or equal to 50,000 and the number, and less than, for this example, I'll just do an arbitrarily high number, 500,000, then that's fine actually. I'll give it this nice green circle. So when I click OK now, what should happen? There you go. And if I order my sales, you'll see that this is very powerful because I've done the very basics here, but actually I can spot in the top 4 rows, hey, I've actually only got 4 customers here that are really good. So instinctively for me, if I was the head honcho of this company, I would say, right, you know what, I'm going to leave those 4 for now because I've got much bigger issues with every other customer. So I'd be saying, right, Joe Blogs, you're the middle manager. I need you to go and press down in your sales team, get calls into all these companies and push. So yeah, icons are my favorite. But for now, I want to look at, I guess, a few more advanced cases. So that's the basics. We know how to apply the different levels of conditional formatting. You don't have to take my word for it, but I think out of all your basic out-of-the-box ones, if you use rules and icons, that's probably your most powerful option. Now, obviously, we can make things more advanced with DAX, which is what we're going to look at. So for now, I will just remove any conditional formatting, just so that everything's back to a nice spot. And I'll just move this table down a little bit. So what we can do now is I've actually built some DAX measures, and forgive me, and Benny, if there's any questions that come in around DAX, let me know. But obviously, I am assuming a little bit of knowledge here, but I'm sure a lot of people do have some knowledge of DAX. So if I go into my invoices, this is a table that we're really working with today because I think it's one of the most powerful for our company and the context that we provided. So I do have a few measures here. Now, I guess the first one we could look at is we obviously have, what I've done here is I've just, when you use a measure, you really want to work with sort of aggregated data. So we just want the total of the sales and the total of the freight. And whenever it actually goes into this table, when we use it or in conditional formatting, Power BI, essentially this table is a method of slicing up the data anyway. You could use these in a variable. You could just create a variable where you actually include the sum, but it's not as reusable. Whereas if we just have it here, the sum of the sales and sum of freight, we can call on it again and again, which is what we may do. So that's important to know. Now, obviously, if you use tabular editor or anything like that, you can create all these in one go. That's great, but I didn't want to assume knowledge in certain areas. So let's say we want to create a conditional formatting use case in a DAX measure. Well, how would we do that? So I've actually got one here where we're looking at freight over 20K, freight costs, because that's going to be concerning for our company and that's going to limit us. So I'm just going to show anyone who doesn't know. To create a new measure, you would just hit the ellipsis here and click new measure, and then we can store it in our measure table and invoices, or we might have a core measure table at the very top, or you might just store it within each field. That's perfectly fine. You can just hit the new measure here, but we will be organized for now. So if I click on this one, freight over 20K, it's actually very simple. So what we're saying here, we're using an if statement. People, if you've got more than two conditions, yeah, you could use a switch statement. But what we're actually doing here, and these are common in any areas of programming, sort of if, else, then statements. So in plain English, what we say is maybe we've got a target that we got in our last briefing, and this could be dynamic. This could be a column somewhere, or we might say if the sum of freight is greater than another field in a table, we could do that equally as easy, and it's actually better. It's more dynamic. It's better practice. But we're saying if the sum of freight is greater than or equal to 20,000 Great British pounds, we want red color, background color to be returned. If not, we'll leave it black because that's the same color as here, and it's just going to merge in. So it's not going to make a difference. So this is your first way to actually power up conditional formatting. So again, if the sum of freight, these items here, greater than 20,000, return red. And this last after the comma is the else part. So it just says anything else, I want to be black. You could add more conditions. You could use a switch true statement, but we're not doing it right now. So how do we take this measure that I've created and add it into a particular field? Well, just like we did before, actually. I'll click on that again, and I can go into my sales. I can right click, conditional formatting, and let's say I want to modify the background color. Great. So I want the format style can't be gradient. That doesn't incorporate my field. I want to go to field value. This is the one that we haven't looked at yet. And it asks us which field we should base it on. So we need to go into invoices, in our measure table. If anyone's wondering, that / is just a quick, easy way because I was building this quickly to get it up here at the top. And I can expand out my measures table here, and I can use freight over 20K because it has those colors within quotations. You'll notice that some of these I can't use because it doesn't have the basic parameters where Power BI can look over the data and say, right, this has got a hex value, a color value, where use the statement, say, right, you can't use those. But that's fine because we can use rate over 20K. And if I click OK and apply it, you'll see, yes, sorry, maybe I've used sales, but the point still stands. Actually, that's wrong. Allow me to correct that because I clicked on sales stupidly. So people probably spotted that before I did, but I'm busy talking. So everyone makes mistakes, that's fine. Rate cost, conditional formatting. Give me a chance to show you again. Background color, field value, invoices, and I want to expand out my measures table and rate over 20K. So I'll click OK now. There we go. So anything that costs me over 20K, and basically any parameter that your company could have decided, and like I said, you could have a link up here to sort of company documents that state the latest figures. I now know if I'm a manager in charge of logistics or supply chain, I'm in trouble when someone finds this, so I better action it quickly. And that's that call to action we speak about. We could then have a separate piece of information here that links people to, maybe I have a hyperlink on the customer. When they click that, it takes us to the contacts page or an email. People can go and then message them, and that's perfectly achievable in Power BI. It's actually very simple. So that's fine. That's pretty basic again in terms of conditional formatting. Now, we've looked at DAX, and we all know that DAX isn't always the best method because when you use large data sets, it's what we call computationally expensive. So that means that it's going to take quite a lot of your computer's processing power. And we always say we'll do things further upstream if we can. So upstream means in Power Query, and if I want to go up again, I could do things in SQL. So I could actually aggregate data in SQL and pull in a view if I wanted to. So if I go to transform data and Power Query, I'm going to show you something else. Again, this is quite basic. People may not know that you can do. So let's say that I'm in invoices again, but I'm actually interested in the country because I have just had some intel. We've got ship country here. That looks all right to me. Let's say I've had some intel that the reason some of our costs are really getting expensive is because France and Germany are charging a premium on imports now. So that's an issue. I need to make people aware. Well, I can actually do this in Power Query. I can add a column and a conditional column, and this will load up. And I'm going to call this column import charges. What I want to say here is if the ship country is equal to Germany, then output premium import. I'll add a clause, else if, which just basically means if again, a ship country is equal to France, then it's also a premium import. So people can begin to piece together their data on why things are happening. I can add a clause again, else if, I'm going to say this ship country equals Switzerland. Again, someone's just rung me, someone from the company, and they said, hey, Switzerland have abandoned these premium import charges. It's cheap imports. I'm going to say cheap import, and I'm going to say get more customers. Call to action. And anything else, this else is that last part of the statement. I'll just say regular import. So I've got a column. Now I'm doing it in Power Query. I'm saying which countries are premium import, and this is going to add more power to our data. So you'll see that's worked. And now in my data model, I've got import charges, and I can see any Swiss customers here, Chop Suey Chinese, or sorry, Geneva, Jan Bern, and in Geneva, Richter, hey, I need to get on here. We need to push, and this is going to help us this quarter. So I'll close and apply those steps, but I'm going to show you a couple more interesting things just before I close for a Q&A. These are a bit more out there, but they're really good tips. This is going to load the data to the model. 2155, and as I say, lightning quick because our data model, it's quite row heavy, but I've done it in SQL and I've imported in the lean items, so it's working quite well for me. And now, let me show you something interesting. So we can actually import things called UNICHAR icons. And I know Federico's used these. I've seen stuff with him using them based on the time. So let's say we want to add a bit of a personal touch here in invoicing, or maybe in navigation. Let's say maybe I have a string where I say, hey, the user's name, because I can get that from their system. Welcome to Matador Traders Report. And then I can include an image if it's the day, or an image if it's the night. Well, how would I do that? It's a good question, and I'm going to show you. So if I go here to my browser, and again, I'm giving you lots of tips all over the place, so hopefully you soak some up. W3 Schools, great resource. And what this does is it's got these UNICHAR numbers, or UNICHAR, I don't know, I'm Scottish, I don't pronounce anything right. But it gives you a decimal value for each item. So I can actually use this 9728 if it's the daytime maybe. And 9733 you see here, well, I could use that if it's nighttime. And I can give my users a bit more of a personal touch depending what time they log in. So let's see how we would do that. So I could say, I've actually got a measure created for you for the sake of time. And I will find which, I believe it's this one here. It's worth noting if you do want to find things, it's just going to limit the screen size as that one there. You can move things. There we go, move it back. So this measure, conditional time icons, what I've done is I said var, a variable, and what a variable does, we name it, and it just stores data, and then we can call it again down here in our switch statement. So if the hour, and that's equal to the current hour that we're in, so we're currently in the hour 18, because it only takes the hour and it takes it in 24-hour time. And we say return, and we use a switch statement, which is just like that if statement. We say if the hour is less than 12, so the morning, I want to return UNICHAR 9728, which is my nice sun icon because it's the daytime. And if the hour is greater than or equal to 12, and the hour is less than 17, so 5 p.m., I'm still going to return that because it's still the daytime. Else, anytime greater than 5 is the nighttime, and before 12. You know, we could make this more specific, but I'm just showcasing here. Returns us the nighttime, the star icon. So that's great. Now, how do I actually get this to display an icon in my report? It's very simple. I take the simple card, I minimize it to be the size that I want, add it in here, and now my conditional time icon, drag it into my card, and it'll take a second to think, and there we go. It takes my system's time very quickly. I can then modify this. I can take away the category label. I can change this, let's say, to a nice yellow gold star. And I can take, in effects, again, I'm using the new format Pane, so it might look a bit different. Take the background away, and there we go. We could incorporate this with a text string. And now, dependent on the time, users get a personal touch, which I'm sure they're going to appreciate. Yeah, and it's just to show you something that's a bit out there. Now, last tip, working with Json conditional formatting icons. Now, I'm going to take it through this one quickly because it's a bit more out there. But let's say, look in here, hey, we go into sales, and in my conditional formatting, I've got icons here. I think the issue is with my sales, the issue that I would find here is that I feel a bit limited with my choice of icons. It's not that great. So I can actually include my own ones through a JSON file. And if you've worked with Power BI themes, you'll be familiar with JSON. But what I can do here is a few steps. So let's say that I don't know how to get rid of that, but let's say that I want to get an icon here. So I can go to flat icons. I use flaticons.net because it's royalty free, which means that, you know, if I include this in a dashboard, it's not copyrighted, so I'm not going to get in any trouble or break any rules and get sued by someone. So let's say I want to find a graph to show when things, my own conditional formatting icon. This is just a way to download a PNG image, essentially. I can take this graph here, finance, and this is a really good because it lets you size it and it lets you color it dynamically. So I think 72 will be fine for me pixels, quite a small image. I can change the color. Let's give it a nice green because it's an upward trend. Cool. And now we can actually just simply download this. Oh, wait, I think I've clicked on the wrong link. That's fine. Here we go. Download, share your custom icon. And let me just check that the green definitely set in there. Let's try again. There we go. Download, share your custom icon. I've got PNG, all free, royalty free, downloaded to my computer. It's called Finance 256. Now, there's this site called, you need to convert it from PNG to base 64 images. So I can click here in this site, base64image.de, and I can add my icon saved into downloads, Finance 256. It's going to go ahead and do this. And what it does, it encodes it into a string that we can add to a JSON file. So I'll show my code, and I want this top one. So I say select all. You can see my images here, and I'll copy it to my clipboard. Great. Now what do we do? All right. Well, what we need to do is we need to create a JSON file. And what we need to do here is I'm going to do it in Notepad, because Notepad's very simple if you don't regularly work with code editors like VS Studio or Sublime Text or Jupyter Notebook or whatever. So I'm going to open the previous one here. I have one called Boilerplate. And this is all that you need to get started with adding in this base 64 string. A name, call it icons. I'll give it a description where I'm just going to call this graph trial. And I'll add in my string that I previously copied and pasted. This is all we need to do. So I'm going to File, Save As, and the last step is to save this in here in all files, and I'll call it boilerplate.json, and I'll save it in my desktop. And now I can go into Power BI Desktop. I can go into my themes here in View. I can browse for a theme. I've got boilerplate, you know it's JSON with these yellow curly brackets, and it'll tell me it was imported successfully. So now if I go to conditionally format sales, I right click and I hit conditional formatting and icons. When I go in a rule to select, you'll see I have my new icon there, looks pretty good, and I can apply it wherever I want. So that was the last step. Bit more out there. I do have a video on this if you want a slower version on my YouTube channel. But yeah, conditional formatting and data visualization, really powerful. And you can do lots of cool things, and I've just highlighted some of those. So I'm going to hand back quickly and look at the Q&A, and Pane, you can take it away for now.
Great, especially the JSON file. The moment there are actually no questions. And there any questions? If there are any questions, just drop it in the Q&A box, or you can indicate so I can unmute you.
Federico's a designer. I'm just looking at this here.
Okay, so there are two questions. So the first question is there any reason why you should put measures in a table rather than in a measure table? Was there any reason why? Because we actually, yeah, I'll send this YouTube channel right now. So are there any reason why specifically you do that, James?
Oh yeah, Federico, that's just purely because I was building it this morning and for speed. But Federico's right. We wouldn't have a subfolder where we include measures. We would have a measure table, and usually what I would do in a professional environment, I would just create a measure table called core measures, and I would try and make it as reusable across all the reports that my data set controls. But yeah, it's a good point, Federico.
Okay, then Federico, you said you had two questions. What was the second question?
Yeah.
Okay, so does the JSON files affect distract other JSON files? So maybe other ones.
Yeah, so Federico, I guess that's a basic example. Now, obviously, you could include more than one JSON item, but what you would ideally do you would ideally, if I'll quickly share my screen, you would actually, let's see if I have any. I think I've got custom JSON files saved here. Let me see. You would have a standard JSON file, a theme that's custom, and then you would just add it in the relevant part here. So I put me in line, I think was one of them. Maybe I don't know. JSON. Let me actually just quickly open up here. So view, and I will look in browse for themes in downloads. Here we go. I've got the University of Melbourne color theme. And if I close that, anyway, the point is, yeah, Federico, we would ideally have large custom essentially, so I don't take up. So it would describe.
It's not really a silly question.
No, there's no silly
It's not
question.
silly question. Then, are there any other questions?
Yeah, while anyone's typing, I guess, Benny, we said at the start, any tips I would have for people who are maybe in this call who are budding?
You can start with just tell us about your journey. Like, how did you get started?
Yeah, that's right. So how I got started, and actually, shout out if you want to look at Jocelyn on LinkedIn. She made a really good post. She's in the group here on her journey, and I think a lot of ours turn out quite messy. I worked when I was at university, I did a bit of old school coding. I did a bit of C#, C++, Python, HTML, Perl, whatever. And I liked it, but I didn't really see the practical applications, so I never really stuck with it. And fast forward a number of years, I worked in supply chain and oil and gas, and suddenly I had to unite two stock systems based out of SAP, which you can plug into Power BI. And from there, I fell in love with it. But it still wasn't a very straightforward journey. I still worked that job for a long time. And for maybe a year or two in my spare time, I was working on my own Power BI things. I then got a job as a Power BI consultant. But the issue was, as a consultant, I was doing a lot of training, and it could vary. So I could be doing Power BI training, then development, and then I could be doing something on Power Automate. But I just wanted to focus on data analysis. So again, I began to become more vocal on LinkedIn. I made a YouTube channel and started to try and show people the skills that I picked up. And that actually got me noticed by a few people. I got some of my own work in my own company. And then I moved in to work in what I do now, business intelligence development for a private healthcare company. So again, rocky journey. It wasn't conventional. I did hospitality management years ago as well. But I worked a lot in my own time. And that's why I tell anyone, my degree is in journalism. You do not need a computer science degree. You do not need a degree. You just need to be able to work hard and show people that you can solve issues. And things like sample data sets like this are really powerful.
Okay. So there's one question. Someone's asking, like, if you did conditional formatting for sparklines.
Oh, have I done conditional formatting for sparklines? Yes. No, I haven't. That's interesting. I actually did a video on sparklines, but I haven't looked at them enough. To be honest, and that's interesting. One other thing that I use conditional formatting for that's really good. There's a custom visual called Icon Map by James Dales. That's quite well known, and conditional formatting in a map visual takes it to the next level. But I haven't used it in sparklines. I may have to look into that. But good question. And yeah, I'm liking Jocelyn's comment from business user to data analyst. She was call center agent. So yeah, there you go. People go in very roundabout journeys, but we all have skills that we can contribute in the industry. Yeah. Ben,
do you have any advice for those starting out?
Yeah. So for those starting out, I think there's a few things. Number one, what I would suggest, because the issue is I tried to, early on when I was learning data, I wish I just focused on fundamentals more. And those things would be data visualization, data modeling, and then a tool like Power BI or Tableau. You know, I'm biased with Power BI. And then something like Python. Thanks, Federico, appreciate that. Something like Python. So you cover all your bases. But what I would say is don't rush in. A lot of people love DAX, and so do I. But it can be quite confusing, so don't rush. Take your time in that stage of your journey. And when you feel you're competent, a lot of people say, how do I get my foot in the door? Well, it wasn't easy for me, and it's not easy for a lot of people. I'm sure it wasn't easy for Jocelyn, but you just need to constantly, my favorite tool is how I met Pane as well on LinkedIn. And I don't network with people to get things. I network with people on LinkedIn because that means when I open up my feed, every day I have loads of new things I learn. And in this industry, my other tip in data analysis, just because you get to a good level doesn't mean that you can just pull off the brakes. And this is what's hard, because every month Power BI releases a new feature, and it releases then there's new languages that comes out, there's no code solutions, so you just always have to press on. So continual learning is my other thing, and find a medium that you find good to show people what you can do. I see now on LinkedIn there's Novi Pro where you can showcase portfolios, and I would recommend YouTube. It's really good because Federico as well, he's with Enterprise DNA, he's head of challenges. You can do challenges, but yeah, basically learn the basics, take your time, continually learn, that's important, and then find a way to show other people what you're good at with data, because then they come to you and you don't have to stand in a queue with 200 people and go for an interview or submit an application. Let people come to you.
So that people come to you without work for beginners. So are there any other questions? Okay. Okay, so there are no other questions. James, thanks so much for coming. It was a really awesome session, and so you should subscribe to James' YouTube channel. He said he's going to post more videos, and probably you must probably see the one about the spark lines on his YouTube channel.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure because there's been great people in here, really interactive, and I'm always impressed the caliber of people that this group gets. So it's a privilege for me to come in, and yeah, hope everyone has a nice weekend as well.
So thank you. So same time same time next Sunday, 6 o'clock. So thank you so much.
Great.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.